The bullet missed Delilah Owen's shoulder by inches, close enough that she felt the hot wake of it cut through the dry Montana air. And in that moment, she realized two things. She was going to die holding Wildflowers, and the man galloping toward her on the black stallion was either her salvation or her doom. It was August 1882, and Delilah had come to Fort Lyon, Montana Territory, with her Aunt Constance 3 weeks prior. Her parents had died of cholera the previous winter in Kansas City, leaving her with nothing but a carpet bag of clothes and the address of her father's sister, a woman she had met only twice in her 22 years. Aunt Constance ran a boarding house in Fort Lyon, a dusty frontier town that served the ranchers and miners scattered throughout the territory. It was not the life Delilah had imagined for herself, but grief and poverty left little room for dreams. That morning, Aunt Constance had sent her to deliver fresh linens to the Johnsons, whose ranch sat 3 miles west of town. Delilah had completed the delivery and started the walk back when she saw them. Wildflowers, hundreds of them, covering the rolling hillside like a patchwork quilt of purple, yellow, and white. Indian paintbrush, lupine, and wild daisies swayed in the warm breeze, and for the first time since her parents' death, something in Delilah's chest loosened. She had not realized how tightly she had been holding her grief until that moment, seeing those flowers nodding in the sunlight like they were welcoming her home. She left the dusty road and climbed the gentle slope, her boots crushing sage and dry grass. The flowers were even more beautiful up close, their petals soft as silk beneath her fingertips. She began gathering them, creating a bouquet of colors that reminded her of her mother's garden back in Kansas City. Her mother had loved flowers, had always kept them on the kitchen table even when money was tight. Delilah was so absorbed in her task that she did not hear the riders approaching until it was too late. 3 men on horseback emerged from behind a rocky outcrop, their faces hard and weathered. The one in front had a scar running from his eye to his jaw, and when he smiled at her, she felt her blood turn to ice. "Well, what do we have here?" the scarred man said, dismounting. "Pretty little thing trespassing on Sutton land." "I did not know," Delilah said, backing away. "I will leave immediately." "Too late for that," another man said. He was younger, maybe 30, with cold blue eyes. "You have already stolen the boss's flowers. That is theft." Delilah wanted to argue that wildflowers could not be stolen, that they belonged to no one, but fear had stolen her voice. The 3 men spread out, moving to surround her. She ran. The first shot came seconds later, and then she saw him. The rancher on the black stallion, riding hard across the open range, his hat pulled low against the sun. He was shooting too, but not at her, at the men chasing her. "Get away from her." His voice carried across the distance, deep and commanding. "Those are my lands, and she is under my protection." The scarred man cursed, and the 3 riders wheeled their horses around. A brief exchange of gunfire followed, but the rancher had surprise and position on his side. The men retreated, galloping east toward the mountains, and suddenly the only sound was the wind in the grass and the thundering of her heart. The rancher dismounted and walked toward her. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of build that came from hard work rather than soft living. His face was sun-bronzed and angular, with dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He looked to be about 27 or 28, young for a rancher of property, but there was something in his bearing that spoke of capability and confidence. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentler than when he had shouted at the men. Delilah shook her head, though her hands were trembling so badly she nearly dropped her flowers. "I am sorry. I did not know I was trespassing. I will leave." He glanced at the bouquet in her hands, then back at her face, Something in his expression softened. "Keep them. They are just flowers." "My name is Nathan Sutton. I own this land, and those men work for my neighbor, Clayton Marsh. They had no right to threaten you." "Delilah Owen," she managed. "I am staying with my aunt in Fort Lyon, Constance Owen. She runs the boarding house." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "I know it." "You are the niece from Kansas City." He hesitated, then added, "I am sorry about your parents. Constance mentioned it when I last saw her in town." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. She had been holding herself together through sheer will for months, and now this stranger's compassion threatened to crack her open. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathan glanced toward the mountains where the riders had disappeared. "I will escort you back to town. It is not safe for you to walk alone, especially not now that Marsh's men have seen you." "I could not impose," Delilah said, though the thought of walking back alone terrified her. "It is not an imposition. It is common decency." He walked to his horse and swung into the saddle with easy grace, then extended his hand to her. "Come on, we will have you home before supper." Delilah looked at his outstretched hand, at the calluses on his palm and the strength in his fingers. She thought about refusing, about insisting on her independence, but survival won out over pride. She took his hand and let him pull her up behind him. The flowers were crushed between them, releasing their sweet fragrance into the air. They rode in silence for the first mile. Delilah clung to Nathan's waist, acutely aware of the warmth of his body, the solidness of him. She had never been this close to a man who was not family, and it made her both nervous and strangely safe. "What did that man mean when he said I stole your flowers?" she finally asked. Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Clayton Marsh and I have been in a land dispute for 2 years. He claims the western boundary of my ranch is actually his, including that hillside where you were picking flowers. He is wrong. I have the original deed and survey maps to prove it. But he has been sending his men onto my land, harassing my ranch hands, trying to intimidate me into giving up the property." "Why does he want it so badly?" "Water. There is a spring on that land that flows year-round. In Montana, water is more valuable than gold." He paused. "Marsh is not a good man, Delilah. He will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. That is why you need to stay away from that area." "I will," she promised. "I had no intention of causing trouble." "You did not cause trouble. You picked flowers." She could hear the smile in his voice. "If more people came onto my land to pick flowers instead of trying to steal it or graze their cattle without permission, I would be a happier man." They crested a hill, and Fort Lyon spread out below them. It was not much to look at. A single main street with a general store, a saloon, a small church, the boarding house, and a scattering of other buildings. But after the terror of the last hour, it looked like sanctuary. Nathan rode straight to the boarding house, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and freshly painted shutters. Aunt Constance was outside sweeping, and she looked up in alarm when she saw them. "Delilah, what happened?" She dropped the broom and hurried over. Nathan helped Delilah dismount, his hand steadying on her waist. "She had some trouble with Marsh's men," he said. "She is fine, but I wanted to make sure she got home safely." Constance's face darkened. "That man is a menace. Sheriff Peters needs to do something about him." "The sheriff is in Marsh's pocket," Nathan said quietly. "We both know that." Constance sighed, then looked at Delilah with concern. "Are you truly all right, dear?" Delilah nodded, still clutching her wildflowers. "Thanks to Mr. Sutton." "Well then, Mr. Sutton, you must stay for supper," Constance said firmly. "It is the least we can do." Nathan started to refuse, but Constance cut him off with a wave of her hand. "I will not take no for an answer. You saved my niece's life. You will eat with us." He looked at Delilah and something passed between them, a connection she could not name but felt all the way to her bones. "All right," he said. "I would be honored." Supper was a simple affair: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and biscuits. But Constance was a wonderful cook, and Nathan ate with the appetite of a man who usually prepared his own meals. Delilah sat across from him, watching his hands as he cut his chicken, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at something Constance said. He was handsome in a rough, unpolished way, and more than once she caught herself staring. "How long have you had your ranch?" Constance asked. 6 years, Nathan said. "I inherited it from my father when he died. He had built it up from nothing, worked himself to death doing it. I have been trying to honor his memory by keeping it running, expanding it where I can." "Do you run it alone?" Delilah asked before she could stop herself. "Mostly. I have 3 ranch hands who help with the cattle and the horses, but the day-to-day decisions, the business side, that is all me." He looked at her directly. "It gets lonely sometimes." The honesty in his admission touched something in her. "I understand lonely," she said softly. "Since my parents died, I feel like I am walking through the world as a ghost." "Delilah," Constance said gently, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "It is true, though," Delilah continued, her eyes still on Nathan. "Everything familiar is gone. I am in a strange place, trying to figure out who I am supposed to be now." "You are supposed to be yourself," Nathan said. "That is always enough." After supper, Nathan insisted on helping with the dishes despite Constance's protests. Delilah found herself standing beside him at the wash basin, acutely aware of his presence. Their hands brushed as he handed her a plate to dry, and she felt an electric jolt run up her arm. "Thank you again for today," she said. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not come along." "I am just glad I was checking the boundary fence," he said. "I ride that area every few days because of Marsh's men." He paused, his hands stilling in the soapy water. "Would you like to see the ranch sometime? The proper way, not running for your life?" Delilah's heart skipped. "I would like that very much. Tomorrow I could come by around 10 if your aunt can spare you." "She can spare me," Constance called from the other room, making them both laugh. That night, Delilah lay in her small bed under the eaves, the wildflowers in a jar on her nightstand. Moonlight streamed through the window, painting everything in shades of silver. She thought about Nathan's hands, strong and gentle at the same time. She thought about the way he had looked at her, like she mattered. She thought about how, for the first time since her parents died, she felt something other than grief. She felt possibility. Nathan arrived promptly at 10 the next morning, riding the same black stallion. He had cleaned up, his hair damp and his shirt fresh, and Delilah felt a flutter in her stomach when she saw him. She had dressed carefully in her best day dress, a simple blue cotton that matched her eyes. The ride to the ranch took 20 minutes. Nathan kept the horse at an easy pace, and this time Delilah felt less nervous about sitting behind him. She allowed herself to relax against his back, to enjoy the warmth of the sun and the beauty of the landscape. The Sutton Ranch sprawled across a valley, with the main house sitting on a slight rise. It was a handsome structure built of logs and stone, with a wide front porch and large windows that would let in plenty of light. Behind it were barns, corrals, and outbuildings. "It is beautiful," Delilah said as they approached. "My father built the house himself," Nathan said with pride. "Took him 2 years, working every spare moment. He wanted something that would last, something solid." He helped her down and led her inside. The house was surprisingly well kept for a bachelor's dwelling. The main room had a large stone fireplace, comfortable furniture, and shelves lined with books. It felt like a home, not just a place to sleep. "You read much?" Delilah asked, drawn to the books. "Every night," Nathan admitted. It is how I survive the winters here. When the snow is so deep you cannot leave the house for days, books become your best friends. Delilah ran her fingers along the spines. She saw novels by Dickens and Twain, books on animal husbandry and land management, poetry by Whitman. We have similar taste, she said. I brought my own small collection from Kansas City. Not much, but enough. You can borrow any of these whenever you like, Nathan offered. I am always happy to find another reader. He showed her the rest of the house, including the kitchen where he clearly spent little time, and his bedroom, which he showed her only briefly with an embarrassed cough. Then they went outside, and he walked her through the ranch operation. There were about 200 head of cattle, several dozen horses, chickens, and 2 enormous dogs named Bear and Wolf, who took an immediate liking to Delilah. She laughed as they jumped around her, tails wagging furiously. They do not usually warm to strangers this fast, Nathan said, watching with amusement. You must be special. Or I smell like bacon from breakfast, Delilah teased. They walked to the top of a hill that overlooked the entire ranch. The view was breathtaking. Rolling grasslands, distant mountains, endless sky. Nathan pointed out his property boundaries, showed her where the disputed land was, explained his plans for expansion. I want to build something lasting here, he said. Something I can be proud of, something I can pass down someday. To your children, Delilah asked, then blushed at her boldness. Nathan looked at her, his dark eyes serious. Someday, yes, if I am lucky enough to find the right woman to share it with. The air between them seemed to thicken. Delilah could feel her heart pounding, could see the pulse beating at the base of Nathan's throat. She wanted him to kiss her, wanted it with a fierceness that shocked her. But he did not. Instead, he looked away, cleared his throat, and started walking back toward the house. They spent the rest of the afternoon together. Nathan taught her how to feed the chickens, laughing when she squealed as they pecked near her feet. He showed her the barn cats and their new kittens. He introduced her to his ranch hands. Old Tom, who had worked for Nathan's father, young Billy, barely 19 and eager to prove himself, and Jorge, a quiet Mexican man with kind eyes and careful hands. As the sun began to sink toward the mountains, Nathan saddled up to take her home. Delilah did not want to leave. She felt more alive here, more herself than she had in months. But she could not impose further, so she climbed up behind him and they rode back to Fort Lyon. Can I see you again? Nathan asked as he helped her down in front of the boarding house. Yes, Delilah said without hesitation. Please. Tomorrow, he smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger and happier. Tomorrow, he repeated, then tipped his hat and rode away. Constance was waiting inside with a knowing smile. He is a good man, Delilah. One of the best around here. I know, Delilah said, and she did. She knew it in her bones. The next week passed in a blur of happiness. Nathan came to town every day and they would walk together, talking for hours. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about losing his mother when he was 12, about the pressure he felt to live up to his father's legacy. She told him about her childhood in Kansas City, about her father's work as a clerk, about watching her parents sicken and die while she remained helpless. I felt so powerless, she admitted one afternoon as they sat by the creek that ran behind the boarding house. I would have traded places with either of them in a heartbeat. Nathan took her hand, the first time he had done so, and the contact sent warmth flooding through her. They would not have wanted that. No parent wants their child to suffer in their place. I know. But knowing that and feeling it are different things. Yes, he said softly. They are. They sat in comfortable silence, his hand still holding hers. Delilah studied his profile, the strong jaw, the straight nose, the way his hair curled slightly at his collar. She wanted to memorize every detail. "I am falling in love with you," Nathan said suddenly, still looking at the water. "I know it is too soon, that I should wait, but I am not good at pretending. I think about you constantly. I go to sleep thinking about you and wake up the same way. You have become essential to me in a very short time, and it terrifies me." Delilah's breath caught. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I lost everyone I ever loved. My mother, my father. What if I lose you too?" She squeezed his hand. "What if you do not? What if we get years and years together? Are you going to let fear of loss steal whatever happiness we could have?" He finally looked at her, and his eyes were bright with emotion. "No, you are right. I am done letting fear run my life." He leaned in and kissed her, gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as she responded. It was Delilah's first kiss, and it felt like coming home. His lips were warm and soft, and when he cupped her face with his hands, she thought her heart might burst from the fullness of it. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Delilah Owen." "I love you too, Nathan Sutton." But happiness, Delilah was learning, was never simple in the Wild West. 2 days later, Clayton Marsh came to town. Delilah was at the general store with Constance when he walked in. She recognized him immediately from Nathan's descriptions. A big man in his 50s with silver hair and cold gray eyes. He was dressed expensively, his clothes tailored and his boots polished to a shine. He looked like money and power, and he knew it. He spotted Constance and walked over with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Mrs. Owen, how lovely to see you." "Mr. Marsh," Constance said coolly. His gaze shifted to Delilah, and something calculating entered his expression. "And who is this?" "My niece, Delilah. She is visiting from Kansas City." "A pleasure," Marsh said, taking Delilah's hand and holding it a moment too long. "I heard about your unfortunate encounter with some of my ranch hands. Please accept my apologies. They were overzealous in protecting what they believed to be my property." "It was not your property," Delilah said, pulling her hand back. "It was Nathan Sutton's land, and I was well within my rights to be there." Marsh's smile hardened. "Is that what Sutton told you?" "The boundaries are disputed, my dear. It is not as clear-cut as he might claim." "The boundaries are perfectly clear to anyone who can read a deed and a survey map," Delilah retorted. Marsh studied her with new interest. "You are friends with Sutton, then? How interesting." He glanced at Constance. "You should be careful about the company your niece keeps, Mrs. Owen. Nathan Sutton is not the upstanding citizen he pretends to be. His father was a drunk who gambled away more than he earned. The son is likely no better." "That is a lie," Delilah said hotly. "Nathan's father was a hard worker who built that ranch from nothing." "Believe what you like," Marsh said with a shrug, "but do not say I did not warn you when Sutton's true nature shows itself." He tipped his hat. "Good day, ladies." After he left, Constance put a comforting hand on Delilah's shoulder. "Do not let him get to you. He is trying to poison you against Nathan because he sees you as a weakness he can exploit." "I would never turn against Nathan," Delilah said fiercely. "I know, dear, but Marsh does not know that yet." That evening, when Nathan came by, Delilah told him about the encounter. His face darkened with anger. "He is trying to scare you away from me. He knows that I care about you, and he thinks he can use that." "How would he know that you care about me?" Nathan sighed. "This is a small town, Delilah. Everyone knows everyone else's business. People have seen us together." "They talk. Let them talk," Delilah said. "I am not ashamed of loving you." Nathan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "I am not ashamed either, but I am worried. Marsh is dangerous. If he thinks he can get to me through you, he will try. Then what do? We are careful. You do not go anywhere alone, and I increase security at the ranch." Over the next few weeks, the tension with Marsh escalated. Nathan's fence lines were cut, allowing his cattle to wander. One of his horses was found shot, the kill wasteful and cruel. Nathan reported everything to the sheriff, but nothing was done. The sheriff claimed there was no proof Marsh was behind the vandalism, even though everyone knew the truth. Delilah spent more time at the ranch, refusing to let fear keep her away. She helped Nathan with the daily chores, learning how to care for the animals, how to mend tack, how to cook hearty meals for the ranch hands. She felt useful for the first time since her parents' death, felt like she had purpose beyond simply surviving. One afternoon, while Nathan was out checking fences with Tom and Billy, Delilah was in the kitchen preparing supper when she heard horses approaching. She looked out the window and saw 3 riders, the same men who had threatened her on the hillside. Her heart began to race. Jorge was in the barn, but he was alone and these men were armed. She grabbed the rifle Nathan kept by the door, checked that it was loaded, and stepped onto the porch. "You are trespassing," she called out, amazed at how steady her voice sounded. The scarred man laughed. "Look who grew a spine." "Where is Sutton?" "None of your concern. Leave now, or I will shoot." "You do not have the guts," the man said, dismounting. Delilah aimed the rifle at the ground near his feet and fired. The bullet kicked up dust inches from his boots, and he jumped back with a curse. "The next one goes in your leg," Delilah said. "After that, I am aiming higher. Leave." The men exchanged glances. The scarred one glared at her with pure hatred. "Marsh is going to hear about this." "Good. Tell him to come himself next time instead of sending cowards." They rode off, and Delilah's hands began to shake so badly she nearly dropped the rifle. Jorge came running from the barn, his own rifle in hand. "Are you all right, Miss Delilah?" he asked in accented English. "I am fine. But we need to tell Nathan." When Nathan returned and heard what had happened, he went pale. "You could have been killed." "But I was not. I defended your property, Nathan. I defended our home." The word "our" hung in the air between them. Nathan set down the tools he was carrying and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. "Marry me," he said into her hair. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other 2 months, but I love you and I need you and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Marry me, Delilah." She pulled back to look at him, saw the love and fear and hope in his eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and when they finally broke apart, all 3 ranch hands were standing nearby, grinning. "About time, boss," Tom said, and everyone laughed. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Fort Lyon. Constance cried happy tears, and half the town turned out for the celebration. Clayton Marsh did not attend, but his absence was a relief rather than an insult. Delilah wore a simple white dress that Constance had helped her make, with wildflowers woven into her hair. Nathan wore his best suit, and when he saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. The reverend kept the ceremony short and sweet. When Nathan kissed his bride, the small church erupted in applause. They held the reception at the boarding house, with tables set up in the street and enough food to feed an army. People danced and laughed and celebrated, and Delilah felt surrounded by community in a way she had not since leaving Kansas City. As the sun set, Nathan borrowed a wagon from the livery and drove Delilah home to the ranch. Their ranch now. Their home. That first night as husband and wife was tender and awkward and perfect. Nathan was patient with Delilah's inexperience, gentle in his touch, and when they finally came together, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I never thought I could be this happy again," Delilah whispered. "After my parents died, I thought that part of me was broken forever. You healed it, Nathan said, kissing the top of her head. Or maybe we healed each other. Maybe. The first few months of marriage were blissful. Delilah threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm, learning everything she could. She proved to have a natural talent with the horses, and soon Nathan was letting her help train the younger animals. She also took over the household accounts, and Nathan was amazed to discover she had a head for numbers. "Where did you learn this?" he asked one evening, looking over her neat ledgers. "My father. He worked with numbers all day, and he taught me everything he knew. He said a woman should be able to support herself if necessary." "Your father was a wise man." Winter came early that year, with snow falling in October and not letting up until April. Just as Nathan had predicted, they were often snowed in for days at a time. But with Delilah there, the isolation did not feel oppressive. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, playing cards, making love, and planning for the future. "I want children," Delilah said one night in January, her head resting on Nathan's lap as he ran his fingers through her hair. "At least 3. 3 sounds perfect," Nathan agreed. "A house full of noise and laughter. You think I will be a good mother? I am scared I will not know what to do." "You will be wonderful. You have so much love in you, Delilah. Any child would be lucky to have you as their mother." She turned to look up at him. "I hope I am already pregnant. Would that not be wonderful? A baby by next fall." As it turned out, she was. In February, Constance confirmed what Delilah had suspected. She was about 3 months along, due in late July. Nathan was so happy he picked her up and spun her around, much to her laughing protests. "Careful, you will make me sick." "I am going to be a father," Nathan said wonderingly. "A father. A wonderful father," Delilah assured him. But with spring came renewed troubles with Clayton Marsh. His harassment had paused during the worst of the winter, but as soon as the snow began to melt, it started again. More cut fences, more missing cattle, more threatening encounters between his men and Nathan's. Then, in April, things came to a head. Nathan was in town picking up supplies when Marsh cornered him outside the general store. "Sutton, we need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you, Marsh." "Then listen. I am giving you one last chance to sell me that western parcel. I will pay fair market value." "It is not for sale." Marsh's expression hardened. "You are being foolish. I always get what I want, Sutton. Always. If you will not sell, I will take it another way." "Are you threatening me?" "I am stating facts. You are a small rancher with limited resources. I have money, men, and the law on my side. How long do you think you can hold out against me?" Nathan stepped closer, his voice dropping dangerously low. "I will hold out as long as it takes. That land is mine, legally and morally. You can harass me all you want, but you will never get it. And if you come near my wife, if you so much as look at her wrong, I will kill you. That is not a threat, Marsh. That is a promise." He walked away before Marsh could respond, his hands shaking with rage. When he got back to the ranch and told Delilah what had happened, she could see the fear beneath his anger. "Maybe we should go to the territorial governor," she suggested. "If the local sheriff will not help, we go over his head. That takes time and money, neither of which we have much of right now." "Then what do we do?" Nathan pulled her close, his hand resting on her growing belly. "We are careful, we watch our backs, and we trust that right will prevail." But right did not prevail, at least not immediately. 2 weeks later, the barn caught fire. Delilah woke to the sound of horses screaming. She sat bolt upright in bed, her heart pounding, and smelled smoke. Nathan was already up, pulling on his pants. "The barn," he said, and ran. Delilah followed as fast as she could, her pregnant belly making her clumsy. Outside, flames were shooting from the barn roof, and the horses were panicking in their stalls. Nathan and the ranch hands were already working to get them out, throwing open stall doors and driving the terrified animals into the corral. "Get back," Nathan shouted when he saw Delilah. "The roof could collapse." But Delilah saw one of the barn cats, the mama cat with her kittens, trapped on a high beam. Without thinking, she ran into the barn. "Delilah, no." The smoke was thick and choking. Delilah covered her mouth with her nightgown and climbed the ladder to the hayloft. She could hear the kittens mewing in terror. She grabbed the mama cat, who clawed her in panic, and scooped the kittens into her nightgown, making a pouch. She had just reached the ladder when a burning beam fell, blocking her path. She screamed, and suddenly Nathan was there, having come in after her. He kicked the beam aside, burning his boot, and grabbed her. "Hold on to those cats and do not let go," he ordered, then threw her over his shoulder and ran. They made it out seconds before the roof collapsed with a roar of flames and sparks. Nathan set her down far from the blaze, and she released the cats, who scattered into the darkness. Then she burst into tears. I am sorry, I saw them and I just reacted. I did not think about the baby, I am so sorry," she sobbed. Nathan held her, his own body shaking. "You scared 10 years off my life. Do not ever do anything like that again." "I will not. I promise." They watched the barn burn until dawn. There was nothing to be done. By the time they could have gotten help from town, the building would have been gone anyway. In the morning light, they surveyed the damage. The barn was a total loss, along with most of their stored hay and grain. The horses and other animals were safe, but it was a devastating blow. "This was Marsh," Nathan said, his voice tight with fury. "I know it was him. Can you prove it?" "No. But I know." Tom found evidence later that day, the remains of a kerosene-soaked rag near where the fire started. It had been arson. Nathan took it to the sheriff, who barely looked at it. "Could have been anyone," the sheriff said with a shrug. "Could have been one of your own hands with a grudge." "My hands have been with me for years. This was Marsh." "Prove it." Nathan slammed his fist on the desk. "You know it was him. Everyone knows. Why will you not do your job?" "Mind your tone, Sutton. I am doing my job. There is just no evidence linking Marsh to this crime." Nathan stormed out before he did something he would regret. Delilah was waiting outside with the wagon, and one look at his face told her how it had gone. "We need help," she said quietly. "We cannot fight him alone." "I know, but who? Everyone around here is either too scared of Marsh or in his pocket." "What about the territorial marshal? Is there not someone we can appeal to?" Nathan considered this. "There is a marshal in Helena. It is a 2-day ride, but he might listen, and he does not answer to anyone local. Then you should go." "I am not leaving you alone, not after last night. I will stay with Aunt Constance in town. I will be perfectly safe there, surrounded by people." Nathan did not like it, but he could see no other option. The next morning he rode for Helena, leaving Delilah in Constance's care. The boarding house felt both safe and confining. Delilah tried to keep busy helping her aunt with the cooking and cleaning, but worry gnawed at her. What if something happened to Nathan on the road? What if Marsh made his move while Nathan was gone? On the second day of Nathan's absence, Delilah was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard a horse approaching. She looked up to see Clayton Marsh riding toward her, alone this time. "Mrs. Sutton, I was hoping to find you here." Delilah straightened, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "What do you want?" Marsh dismounted, his movements slow and deliberate. "Just to talk, woman to woman, you might say." "I am not interested in anything you have to say, not even if it concerns your husband's safety." He smiled at her sharp intake of breath. "I thought that might get your attention. You see, I know Nathan went to Helena to see the marshal. I have people who tell me things, and I want you to convince him to drop this foolish complaint." "Why would I do that?" Because if you do not, something unfortunate might happen to him on the ride back. The roads can be dangerous. Bandits, accidents, who knows what could go wrong? Delilah felt ice in her veins. You are threatening to kill my husband. I am suggesting that he might be safer if he abandoned this crusade against me. You are a smart woman, Mrs. Sutton. Surely you can see that I always win. Always. Nathan can sell me that land and walk away with his life and his ranch intact. Or he can keep fighting and lose everything, including possibly you and that baby you are carrying. Rage replaced fear. Get out right now, or I will scream and bring everyone in this boarding house running. Scream all you want. Who do you think they will believe? You, the newcomer. Or me, one of the wealthiest men in the territory? He leaned closer. Think about what I said. You have influence over your husband. Use it wisely. He rode away, and Delilah ran inside to find Constance. Her aunt listened to everything, her face growing more and more grim. That man has gone too far, Constance said. We need to tell someone. Who? The sheriff is useless. Nathan is already gone to Helena. I feel so helpless, Aunt Constance. What can I do? Constance thought for a moment. There is someone else who might help. Do you remember Judge Morrison? He presides over the territorial court. He and your uncle were friends before your uncle died. He is an honest man, and he has no love for bullies like Marsh. Where is he? Here in Fort Lyon. He is staying at the hotel while he hears cases this week. We could go see him right now. Judge Morrison was a stern-looking man in his 60s with sharp blue eyes and a reputation for fairness. He listened carefully as Delilah recounted everything. The harassment, the barn fire, Marsh's threats. When she finished, he sat back in his chair, fingers steepled. This is serious. But you understand that threats alone are not enough to arrest a man of Marsh's standing. I need more. What if he had a witness to his confession? A voice said from the doorway. They all turned to see Tom, Nathan's oldest ranch hand, standing there with his hat in his hands. Tom. Delilah said in surprise. What are you doing here? Looking for you, Mrs. Sutton. I heard in town that Marsh came to see you. I got worried. He turned to the judge. I heard what you said about needing evidence. I can give you evidence. I used to work for Clayton Marsh about 5 years back. I quit because of the things he did, the laws he broke. But I saw things, Your Honor, things that would put him behind bars if anyone had the courage to testify. The judge leaned forward. What kind of things? Fraud, intimidation, arson. He burned out a homesteader family who would not sell to him. Killed the father when he fought back. Covered it up to look like an accident, but I saw the whole thing. I have kept silent because I was scared, but I cannot stay quiet anymore. Not when he is threatening good people like the Suttons. Why should I believe you? You worked for him. You might be lying to protect your current employer. Tom met his eyes squarely. Because I am willing to swear to it under oath. Because I can show you where the bodies are buried, literally. Because I am an old man with not much time left, and I want to die with a clear conscience. The judge studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I will open an investigation, but I need you to put everything you just told me in writing, witnessed and signed. I will do it right now. Over the next hour, Tom dictated his testimony while the judge's clerk wrote it all down. It was a damning document, detailing years of illegal activity. When Tom signed it, his hand shook, but his signature was clear and firm. This stays between us for now, the judge said. If Marsh gets wind of this investigation before I have all my evidence, he might flee the territory. Tom, you need to stay somewhere safe. Mrs. Sutton, you as well. I am not leaving Fort Lyon until my husband returns, Delilah said firmly. Then at least stay out of sight. Do not give Marsh any opportunity to make good on his threats. Delilah agreed, though it chafed to hide. She wanted to stand and fight, but she had the baby to think about. She spent the next 2 days at the boarding house, watching the road for any sign of Nathan. He returned on the evening of the third day, riding hard into town. Delilah ran to meet him, and he swept her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I heard what happened with Marsh," he said into her hair. "Tom told me when I stopped at the ranch. Are you all right?" "Is the baby all right? We are fine. But Nathan, so much has happened. Judge Morrison is investigating Marsh. Tom gave testimony about crimes Marsh committed years ago. Things are finally moving." Nathan pulled back to look at her, hope and disbelief warring on his face. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. The marshal you spoke to in Helena, did he agree to help?" "He said he would look into it, but he was non-committal. But if Judge Morrison is involved, that changes everything. Morrison is respected throughout the territory." Over dinner, with Constance and Tom present, they shared information. The marshal in Helena had been interested in Nathan's story, especially the evidence of arson. He had promised to coordinate with local authorities. Now, with Judge Morrison also investigating and Tom's testimony, they finally had real hope that Marsh would face justice. "We need to be careful," Tom warned. "Cornered animals are the most dangerous. If Marsh realizes how close the walls are closing in, there is no telling what he might do." Tom's warning proved prophetic. The next morning, one of Marsh's ranch hands came to town, bloodied and terrified. He went straight to Judge Morrison and confessed everything. Marsh had ordered him and 2 others to ambush Nathan on his way back from Helena, to kill him and make it look like a robbery. The hand had refused, and Marsh had beaten him, threatened to kill him too. He had escaped and ridden straight to Fort Lyon to confess. Judge Morrison moved fast. He sent riders to bring the territorial marshal and organized a posse to arrest Marsh. Nathan, despite Delilah's protests, joined the posse. "I need to see this through," he told her. "I need to face him. Please be careful. Please come back to me. I will, I promise." The posse rode out to Marsh's ranch, 12 men strong. They found Marsh in his study, calmly drinking whiskey as if he had expected them. "Gentlemen," he said with a cold smile, "to what do I owe this pleasure?" Judge Morrison stepped forward. "Clayton Marsh, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, arson, fraud, and various other crimes. You will come with us peacefully, or we will take you by force." For a moment, it seemed Marsh might fight. His hand drifted toward the gun on his desk. But then he looked at the assembled men, at the determination in their faces, and something in him deflated. He was beaten, and he knew it. "I want my lawyer," was all he said. They took him to the territorial prison in Helena to await trial. His ranch was seized as evidence, his assets frozen. The news spread throughout the territory, and other victims of Marsh's schemes began coming forward, emboldened by his arrest. The trial took place 3 months later in July, just 2 weeks before Delilah's due date. Nathan wanted to attend, but Delilah's condition made travel impossible, so Tom went to represent the Sutton family and testify. He returned a week later with good news. Marsh had been convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 20 years in prison. "It is over," Tom said, his old face creased with satisfaction. "He is finished." "Thank God," Delilah breathed, her hand on her swollen belly. 5 days later, on a hot July afternoon, Delilah went into labor. Nathan sent Billy racing to fetch the doctor, while Constance and Tom helped Delilah to the bedroom. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Nathan paced the house like a caged animal, jumping at every sound. Finally, just after dawn, he heard the thin, angry cry of a newborn. He rushed to the bedroom door, which Constance opened with a tired but radiant smile. "You have a son," she said. "A healthy, beautiful boy, and Delilah is fine, just exhausted." Nathan entered the room on shaking legs. Delilah lay propped against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but glowing. In her arms was a tiny bundle, red-faced and squalling. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Nathan approached the bed like he was approaching something holy. He looked down at the baby, at the tiny fists waving in the air, and felt his heart crack open with love. "He is perfect," he whispered. "We need to name him," Delilah said. "What do you think of Noah? Noah Samuel Sutton, after your father Samuel. That is perfect. Just perfect." Nathan carefully took the baby from her, cradling him close. Noah quieted immediately, his little eyes blinking up at his father. "Hello, Noah. I am your papa. I am going to love you and protect you and teach you everything I know." Delilah watched them, tears of joy streaming down her face. A year ago she had been alone and grieving, picking wildflowers on a hillside and running for her life. Now she had a husband she adored, a newborn son, a home she loved, and a future bright with possibility. It seemed like a miracle. The first year of Noah's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and joyful days. He was a healthy, happy baby with his father's dark eyes and his mother's smile. Nathan proved to be a doting father, always ready to walk the floor with a crying infant or change a dirty diaper. Delilah would find him in the nursery late at night, just watching Noah asleep with an expression of wonder on his face. "I still cannot believe he is real," Nathan admitted one such night. "That we made him, that he is ours." "I know exactly what you mean," Delilah said, slipping her arm around his waist. With Marsh in prison, the ranch thrived. The disputed land was officially recognized as Sutton property, and Nathan was able to expand his cattle operation. They rebuilt the barn, bigger and better than before. Tom, Billy, and Jorge remained loyal employees, and Nathan hired 2 more hands as the ranch grew. Delilah found unexpected joy in her role as ranch wife and mother. She had thought she might miss city life, but she loved the open spaces, the hard work, the sense of building something lasting. She started a vegetable garden that flourished under her care, and learned to can and preserve for the long winters. She made friends with other ranch wives, women who understood the challenges and rewards of frontier life. When Noah was 2, Delilah discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1886, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Dorothy, after Delilah's mother. Nathan was just as smitten with his daughter as he had been with his son, and Noah was thrilled to have a baby sister to protect. 2 years after Dorothy came twin boys, James and Jesse, who were handfuls from the moment they were born. Delilah joked that she needed to grow extra hands just to keep up with them. Nathan hired a young woman from town to help with the children and the household work, which gave Delilah time to help more with the ranch business. She proved to have a sharp eye for breeding stock, and the Sutton horses gained a reputation for quality throughout the territory. Nathan increasingly relied on her judgment, and they made all major decisions together. They were true partners in every sense of the word. When Noah turned 6, Nathan built a 1-room schoolhouse on the ranch and hired a teacher, a young widow from Helena who needed work. Other ranching families in the area sent their children too, and soon they had 8 students of varying ages. Delilah was determined that her children would have the education she had received, even out here in the wilds of Montana. In 1890, Montana achieved statehood, and the Suttons celebrated along with everyone else in Fort Lyon. The town had grown considerably in the 8 years since Delilah's arrival, with new businesses and homes springing up regularly. It was no longer a rough frontier outpost, but a real community, with churches and schools and social organizations. Clayton Marsh died in prison in 1891, having served only half his sentence. Nathan felt no satisfaction in the news, just relief that the man could never threaten his family again. Marsh's ranch had been sold to pay his debts and fines, and the new owners were decent people who quickly became friends with the Suttons. As the years passed, Nathan and Delilah's love only deepened. They had been through hardship and danger together, had built a life and a family from nothing, and the bond between them was unbreakable. They still found time for each other despite the demands of ranch and children, still took walks together in the evenings, still read aloud by the fire on winter nights. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Delilah back to the hillside where she had been picking wildflowers that fateful day. It was August again, and the hillside was covered in blooms just as it had been when they first met. "I want to remember this," Nathan said, gathering a bouquet of wildflowers just as she had. "I want to remember the day my life changed, the day I found you." Delilah kissed him, long and deep, tasting the sweetness of a decade together and the promise of decades more to come. "I love you, Nathan Sutton. I love you more now than I did the day we married. And I love you more than words can express. You saved me, Delilah. Before you, I was just going through the motions, existing but not really living. You taught me how to hope again, how to love without fear." They stood there holding hands, looking out over the ranch they had built together. The house, the barns, the corrals, the fields green with summer grass. In the distance, they could see their children playing, their laughter carried on the wind. "You ever regret leaving Kansas City?" Nathan asked. "Do you ever wish for a different life?" Delilah considered the question seriously. "No," she finally said. "I will always miss my parents, always wish they had lived to see the life I built, but regret? Never. This is exactly where I am meant to be." By the time Noah was 15, he was as tall as his father and just as capable on the ranch. He had his father's steady temperament and his mother's sharp mind, and Nathan began teaching him the business side of ranching, preparing him to eventually take over. Dorothy, at 13, was a skilled horsewoman who could outride most of the ranch hands. She had her father's love of animals and her mother's determination. The twins, now 11, were still wild and rambunctious, but they worked hard when needed and showed promise of becoming fine men. Delilah was pregnant again at 39, much to her own surprise. She had thought her childbearing years were behind her, but apparently fate had other plans. Nathan worried about her, knowing that pregnancy at her age carried more risks, but the doctor assured them she was healthy and strong. In the spring of 1895, Delilah gave birth to their 6th and final child, a daughter they named Caroline. She was a beautiful baby with red hair and green eyes, looking like neither parent but somehow perfect anyway. Noah held her with the same wonder Nathan had shown holding him 15 years earlier, and Delilah saw the generations connecting, saw the continuity of family and love. Tom passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1897, at the age of 76. He had been like a grandfather to the Sutton children, and his loss was deeply felt. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch with a simple headstone that read, "Tom Wilson, loyal friend, honest man, rest well." Billy married the schoolteacher in 1898, and Nathan gave them a parcel of land to start their own ranch. It was a generous gift, but Nathan considered it earned. Billy had worked faithfully for the Suttons for nearly 20 years, and Nathan wanted to see him succeed. As the new century dawned, the Suttons were one of the most respected families in the region. Their ranch was prosperous, their children were thriving, and Nathan and Delilah's love story had become something of a legend in Fort Lyon. People spoke of how she had been picking wildflowers on his land, how he had let her keep them and given her his heart, how they had built something beautiful together out of hardship and determination. On a summer day in 1900, Delilah stood in her garden, watching her children and grandchildren play. Noah had married a local girl and given them 2 grandchildren already, with a third on the way. Dorothy was courting a young banker from Helena who seemed worthy of her. The twins were 17 now, on the cusp of manhood, and little Caroline was 5, already showing signs of the same independence her mother possessed. Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. How far we have come, how blessed we are." "We are blessed," Nathan agreed, "but we also worked for it, we fought for it. We earned every bit of happiness we have." Delilah turned in his arms to face him. At 44 and 51, respectively, they were no longer young, but their eyes still lit up when they looked at each other. Nathan's hair was streaked with silver now, and Delilah had laugh lines around her eyes, but they were beautiful to each other in the way that only comes from years of deep love. "You remember the day we met?" Delilah asked. "When you came riding over that hill like a venging angel." "How could I forget? You were standing there with your arms full of wildflowers, looking terrified and brave at the same time. I fell in love with you in that moment, even though I did not realize it yet. I was so scared of those men, of being alone in the world, of everything. And then you appeared and everything changed." "We changed each other," Nathan corrected. "You made me believe in happiness again. You gave me a reason to build something beyond just honoring my father's memory." They stood there in the fading sunlight, surrounded by the life they had created, the family they had raised, the love they had nurtured for 18 years. In the distance, the wildflower hillside blazed with color, just as it had the day they met. "Promise me something," Delilah said softly. "Promise me we will grow old together, that I will get to love you for many more years." "I promise. We will watch our grandchildren grow up, maybe even great-grandchildren. We will sit on that porch in our rocking chairs and tell stories about the old days. We will love each other until our very last breaths." "And beyond," Delilah added. "And beyond," Nathan agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. The years continued to unfold with both joy and sorrow, as life always does. James married at 20 and moved to California to start a horse ranch, bringing his frontier knowledge to the growing western state. Jessie stayed in Montana, taking over more of the daily ranch operations as Nathan began to slow down. Dorothy married her banker and settled in Helena, though she visited often with her growing brood of children. Caroline, their youngest, surprised everyone by declaring at 16 that she wanted to become a doctor. It was an unusual ambition for a young woman in 1906, but Delilah and Nathan supported her dream. They sent her east to college, and she excelled, eventually becoming one of the first female physicians in Montana. In 1910, Nathan suffered a mild heart attack. It frightened them both, a stark reminder of mortality. He recovered, but he was never quite the same, moving slower, tiring more easily. Noah officially took over as head of the ranch, though he always consulted his father on major decisions. Delilah and Nathan spent more time together in those years, taking long walks when Nathan felt up to it, sitting on the porch watching the sunset, visiting with their ever-expanding family. They had 9 grandchildren by 1912, with more on the way, and Nathan joked that he needed a chart to keep track of everyone. "This is what we built," he would say, gesturing to the chaos of children running and playing. "Not just the ranch, but this. A family that will go on long after we are gone." On a warm August day in 1915, Nathan and Delilah returned once more to the Wildflower hillside. They were both in their 60s now, moving slowly, but they made the climb together, hand in hand. The flowers were as beautiful as ever, perhaps more so for all the memories attached to the place. 33 years, Nathan said wonderingly. 33 years since I found you here. Since we found each other, Delilah corrected with a smile. They sat in the grass, surrounded by blooms, and Nathan gathered a bouquet just as he had on their 10th anniversary. For you, he said, presenting them with a courtly bow that made her laugh. You are still the most romantic man I know. Only for you, only ever for you. They sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing, remembering the past and dreaming about the future. They talked about their children's accomplishments, their grandchildren's personalities, the ways the ranch and the town had changed over the decades. You have any regrets? Nathan asked as the sun began to set. Delilah thought carefully. I wish my parents had lived to see all this. I wish we had not lost that baby between Dorothy and the twins. I wish Tom had lived longer, but regrets about my choices, about marrying you, building this life, not one. Good, because I would do it all again exactly the same way. Every hardship, every challenge, it was worth it to have you by my side. They watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, their hands clasped together, their love as strong as it had been 3 decades earlier. When the stars began to emerge, they walked slowly back to the ranch, back to the house that had witnessed so much life, so much love. Nathan lived another 3 years, passing peacefully in his sleep in 1918 at the age of 69. He died as he had lived his last 36 years, with Delilah's hand in his. His last words were, I love you. Thank you for the best life a man could ask for. Delilah mourned him deeply, but she did not break. She had her children and grandchildren around her, and she took comfort in knowing that Nathan's legacy lived on in all of them. She remained active in ranch affairs for several more years, her mind sharp even as her body slowed. She lived to see Noah's children have children of their own, making her a great-grandmother. She lived to see Caroline become a renowned physician who opened a clinic specifically for women and children. She lived to see the ranch prosper under Noah's stewardship, growing even larger than Nathan had dreamed. On a summer morning in 1925, at the age of 70, Delilah asked Noah to take her to the Wildflower hillside one last time. He drove her there in his new automobile, though she teased him that horses were still superior for ranch work. The hillside was as beautiful as ever, carpeted in color. Noah helped her from the car and offered his arm for support, but Delilah walked the last few yards alone, wanting to face the place where her great love story had begun with dignity and strength. She stood among the flowers, closing her eyes and feeling the warm breeze on her face. She could almost hear Nathan's voice, could almost feel his presence beside her. She had loved him for 43 years and mourned him for 7, and she knew with absolute certainty that their love was the kind that transcended death. I will see you soon, my darling, she whispered to the wind. Wait for me. She walked back to where Noah stood, tears streaming down his face, and took his arm. Take me home, son. Delilah passed away peacefully 2 weeks later, surrounded by family, her last words a simple, Nathan. They buried her beside her husband on the hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Her headstone read, Delilah Owen Sutton. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she picked wildflowers and found love. The ranch continued for generations, always staying in Sutton hands, always prosperous and well managed. The story of Nathan and Delilah became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of true love, of courage, of building something lasting. The Wildflower hillside still blooms every August, and Sutton descendants still pick bouquets there. Still remember the day a young widow found hope among the flowers, and a lonely rancher found the other half of his soul. It remains a place of beauty and memory, a testament to a love that changed not just two lives, but generations. In the little church in Fort Lyon, now over 100 years old, there hangs a painting that Caroline commissioned before she died. It shows a young woman with her arms full of wildflowers and a tall rancher on a black horse the moment their eyes first met. Below it, a brass plaque reads, "She was picking wildflowers on his property. The rancher let her keep them in his heart." Nathan and Delilah Sutton, 1882–1925, together forever. And in the quiet moments, when the wind blows across the Montana grasslands and the wildflowers sway in the breeze, some say you can still see them there, hand in hand, walking through the blooms, their love eternal and unbreakable, a beacon of hope and romance that will never fade.